Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate you and the Senate President calling a special session. I think it was very important you did that. I can't imagine not responding to the Supreme Court, so thank you. I heard the questions yesterday to Chair Oliva, and it was interesting to hear some of the responses, not necessarily from the chair, but back and forth during questions. And specifically, one of the responses was that this process may not be able to produce a constitutional map. At the end of the day, that may not happen. Nobody's certain about that. But I wanted to make sure that we all understand precisely why it is we're here having this debate today and passing out a base map. And it's pretty simple. It's not because the Supreme Court woke up one day and said we're going to go ahead and interfere with maps. That did not happen. They were triggered into action, as they are called, into action. Article 2, Section 3, we've heard it earlier, to respond to unconstitutional acts of this chamber, of the Senate chamber, of a legislature that acted, in my view, irresponsibly. That's why I voted no a few times. And voted for constitutional maps. Specifically, there were secret efforts by, and I quote, political consultants or operatives did in fact conspire to manipulate and influence the redistricting process. That happened. That's one reason the Supreme Court probably should get involved if they're in fact defending the people of Florida against unconstitutional acts of this chamber. Those operatives conspired with leadership of this chamber, and I will say, Mr. Speaker, former leadership of this chamber, and the Senate to make a, quote, mockery of the process. Okay, that sounds pretty good. I think the Supreme Court probably should have something to say. Maps drawn by those partisan operatives with lines to benefit one party, it wasn't my party, were secretly submitted under false names. That sounds kind of funny. This is an open process. I don't know if that's constitutional. Maybe a trigger for the Supreme Court of Florida. And perhaps most damning, records revealing the connections were destroyed by those same operatives, didn't destroy emails, and we know they existed. Okay, that might be a problem too. So we're here, right? So we have a responsibility to understand why we're here. We're not here because of the Supreme Court. We're here because of the former leadership of this very chamber. They violated the Constitution. There's a mountain of evidence that demonstrates that it was violated. Secret operatives working with partisan intent infiltrated this very chamber not that long ago. So I think I'm very pleased that the Supreme Court stepped in. The Supreme Court stepped in. They are acting on behalf of the people of Florida to make sure, according to the Constitution, that there is a check and balance. That's what we all learn from grade school through high school and beyond, that there's this check and balance. Are we upset that there's a check and balance? Some of us may be. I get that, but there is this constitutional check and balance. So that brings us to why we're here today and our response for the last number of days. Thus far, we've followed parts of the order we couldn't be held in contempt for ignoring. Think about that. So we're trying to meet that threshold where we're not found in contempt, but we didn't do everything the Supreme Court asked this body to do, in my opinion. They asked us to make the map publicly, and it came out of a secret process executed by 3 staff people. Now, perception's everything, by the way. I think highly of these folks. But 3 white men in a closed room for 10 days. Not assuming they did anything improper, but perception is everything to 20 million people of every background and ethnicity and culture in this entire state of Florida. As a white man, I can tell you I've met some white men who may not necessarily take that opportunity to do the right thing. They asked us to record all non-public meetings. Instead, there are 10 days of meetings for which we have no recording, no records, and no one has explained really what happened. But we know it was 10 days. We know the door was closed. We know that on occasion, counsel was brought in to answer perhaps questions. I don't know why they were brought in. Maybe they were delivering lunch. Could be. We don't know. We know there were conversations with outside counsel, but apparently the memory, nobody really understands. That is a problem, those conversations. At the end of the day, what are we voting on today? Because I have a feeling we'll be back in a few days to look at something else. I think we have an opportunity here through September 25th, and nobody knows what the governor's going to do with whatever we produce, to come up with maps that meet some sort of constitutional approval with the Supreme Court. The fact that we've based the process on that 10 days, if I'm working somewhere and somebody says, hey, a message came in for you, they want you to call them back, and I say, do me a favor, just answer the message, do whatever you want. I think maybe I've abdicated my role, perhaps as a supervisor, perhaps as a decision maker, and allowed somebody else to do it for me. I think this chamber may have abdicated their role by doing the least requested to come up with a product, and we really, I don't think anybody in this chamber can say, because it is a base map, we had anything with the production of the map that's before us today. I would challenge, I'd submit to each person here that perhaps we've done nothing for 10 days other than spit out, with all due respect, Chair Oliva, because I think you're a marvelous person, I think you've done what you needed to do. But I don't think we've done what we've needed to do as a body to incorporate our thoughts as 120 members into a product that meets the constitutional requirements that the court has asked us to come up with. And that's a problem. We extend, perhaps we will. We could make this map something we can explain publicly, perhaps we will. There's still time for that. But as we're looking at this map today, there's some pretty big holes in what we're producing in terms of it being constitutional. And remember what I said about perception? Perception is everything. So if we want to move forward today and vote this map out, which I'm certain will happen, keep in mind that perception is everything. Can somebody in the public look at this body and go, you know what, they did it right this time? They came up with a different process, because we did this time, by the way. We put 3 people in a room for 10 days. That's different. And we said, come up with something and we'll take a look at it. Oh, pretty good. We'll kick it out on the House floor. That's what we're doing. Not a whole lot of depth, in my view, in terms of this product. So be very careful. Perception is everything. And I challenge the members, my colleagues, my friends, to do the right thing today. We're here working for the people. Yeah, we have to leave our personal lives and come up here and do something, but let's make the most of it. Let's have a bigger part in what we do as a body and do the right thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.